Writing about the world around us can be both special and daunting. How much detail is too much detail? How do you do research? Then there's the whole other thing with time. How long will it take to write it? Is there a timeline we need to follow? These are all questions Weena Pun had to face as she wrote Kanchhi, her debut novel that is set in her grandmother's village. She joins this episode to talk about her book and what kept her going in this journey. Weena is a graduate of Stanford University and the MFA program in creative writing at Cornell University. Her writings have appeared in Himal South Asian, The Kathmandu Post, The Record, House of Snow, an anthology of the greatest writing about Nepal, and elsewhere. Thank you for tuning in to How'd You Create That? The podcast is supported by the Open Institute for Social Science. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn. And we are now also on Substack with curated writings from the podcast on creativity and the creative life. I'm your host, Alfa. Welcome, Weena. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. How are you feeling today?
Thank you, Alfa. Thank you for having me. I'm all right. Okay.
I'm excited to be having this conversation about your book, Kanchhi. Can you let us know something about your book, like an introduction? What is it about, from the author herself?
I would say Kanchhi is about a young girl who disappears at the age of 16 and about her mother who awaits her return. Because the novel takes place in rural Nepal, and the timeline it captures is from the late 60s, late 70s to 2005, kind of. Yeah, sorry, that's like the bare bones of it. And I just probably only focus on the plot and the structure.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. That is, I think, a lovely introduction to Kanchhi, without giving away a lot. I'm curious about where did the name Kanchhi come from? It's a popular name. It's a common name in Nepal. Also, sometimes, Kanchhi is the youngest daughter, or, that's how, that's the name that is often called. But the Kanchhi, the character in your story, is an only child. I don't think that'll be a spoiler if I said that. So I'm just curious, where did that name come from? Yeah.
So Kanchhi, I had always called her Kanchhi. I think her legal name, her school name, came much later, actually. But the character Kanchhi, I had always called Kanchhi from the very beginning. And that's because I think it is true that the literal translation of Kanchhi means, the youngest one. But of course, like you said, in a day-to-day lives or everyday lives, that's not necessarily the case. Like any young girl, you can call her Kanchhi. And if you're an only child, for a while, you will get that nickname, Kanchhi. And then if you happen to have a younger sibling, then she might take the title away from you. But if the name sticks, if you end up becoming the only child, the name will stick. So it all depends on who calls you Kanchhi and whether that name sticks or not. But yeah, as for the character, she was always called Kanchhi. And I think that's because whenever I would go to my grandmother's village where this novel is set in or based on, people will just, if they don't know you and if they don't know that I am the firstborn, they just call me Kanchhi. Because they're like, hey, hey, Kanchhi, come here, or something like that, So that's just like such a, like you said, a common thing to say. If there's a little girl walking around, you just call her Kanchhi. Like you don't have to guess whether she's firstborn or thirdborn or the youngest one.
Oh, so that's it's like a girl. Yeah,
it's a young girl. You just have it seems like I think what it has to happen is that the person who's calling you Kanchhi has to be older than you. I think that's about it.
Yeah, and
as you mentioned that, I just remember that a lot of characters in the book are like Didis and Dais. They're much older than the character herself. So yeah, that does make sense. Something that was very interesting about the book that I noticed when I was reading was there are two timelines. One, everything is in November 13, 2005. It's November 13, right? And the other parts, like we travel across decades and decades. I'm curious, how did that structure come? Where one part is a single day and the other is like leaping through time.
I think the single day was always there. That was one of the things that I had locked in, I think, from the very first draft, like way back in 2008 when I began drafting the novel for the first time. And my guess is that I was probably influenced by Mrs. Dalloway, Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, which takes place in one day. That's my guess, but I'm not exactly sure anymore what caused it. But I knew that the present part would have to take place in a day. Maybe to my own detriment, because I could never move away from it. And I knew the past part would have to take, in the past, and wouldn't, of course, take place in one day. But that it would take place over decades, that only happened much later when I started working on Kanchhi's part. So I think that structure was always set in place. And I'm not exactly sure what made me. But I think when I thought about the plot, it just made sense, I think, because the plot, when I began the novel, the plot was pretty clear. It was going to be about a mother waiting for her daughter to come home. So then, of course, obviously right away, there is a mother waiting for her daughter, and there is a part where we know something happened to the daughter and she's disappeared. So there was always that, two timelines. I think that's where the timeline just came forth from the plot.
It just emerged.
I think so, yes.
Where did the inspiration for this story come from? I'm sure you've been asked this question so many times.
Not in those particular words, of course, but yeah, I was the inspiration, like going back to the very beginnings of the novel. It definitely came from my grandmother's village, which is my mom's village. We as like my family, we used to visit her place almost every year. Up until the Civil War, the Maoist War made it kind of impossible for us to go. And even before that, when I was about 3 years old, I spent a year there. So I think my earliest memories and one of the fondest memories are from the village. And I think that's where it came from. But then, looking back in retrospect, sometimes I do, excuse me, sometimes I do wonder if it's because I wanted to just probably know my mom more, her life. And maybe this was me trying to understand that. And by trying to understand my mom, trying to understand myself, my origins, I guess, where I came from. But of course, it's all in retrospect. And I wouldn't say this was an inspiration, but maybe it was all along. So.
This is something that one of our listeners asked. We did this Ask the Author campaign where we asked people on Instagram to send their queries. And this is a query that I got where, we're talking about you finding your roots, in retrospect. And then we see a lot of literature that has been coming out in Nepal, at least in English specifically. It's very rooted in social realism. They're real things happening. What do you think that does to the literary scene and to the writers and to the readers? There are not a lot of experiments happening, or so. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we get a lot of experimented stuff that's coming out. But what do you think is that doing in your experience?
I think it's only normal to expect that right now, because I think we're laying the foundation right now. We as in the writers, because we have unfortunately even writers who write in Nepali, and we only started really writing short stories or novels, let's say, probably in the 60s, and before that, of course, people were probably writing, but we didn't have that bursting literary scene. And I think because of that, because we don't have a history, like a deep history, we could keep going back, and because we don't have that, I think we don't know very well who we are, or our literature hasn't been able to help us know that. And I think because of that, maybe this generation of writers who are now able to, who are more quote unquote educated, in the sense that, after 1990s, and the access to education has become easier. So maybe this generation of writers now who can now write in both English and Nepali are now finally able to use that and try to figure out who they are, or what their society is, what the real life, what the reality in Nepal is like. And I think by doing that, and by writing more, like you said, fiction rooted in social realism, I think we're just laying the foundation so that once we have enough of that, then I think experiments can take place. And then I think different other genres writing can then, I think, happen. So I think it's actually, it's enriching, and hopefully whatever we're doing will help other writers to be like, okay, now that we know enough about ourselves, let's use that to experiment and maybe, write a sci-fi based on it, or maybe write, a novel in the fantasy genre. I don't know. It's like, but I feel like before we can know that, before we know who we are, it's like very hard to just then, leap ahead and do something else. That's my reading on this.
True. Yeah, it's just starting. So yeah. What was the research process like for your book? You said that it's your mother's hometown? So your grandmother's. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's where my mom was born and raised too. So it was, it was her home village.
Home village, yeah. So what was the research process like? Writing the characters, how they talk or what they eat, what they're wearing. What was it like, building this entire world in your story?
It wasn't easy. Funnily enough, I thought I knew the village, because I was like, oh, I've spent a year there. I've been there. I've been Dashi, So when I began in 2008, I just assumed I knew it. It's only after I started writing the very first draft or pre-drafts, which were really bad, I realized, oh, I know nothing. Like, I know absolutely nothing about this village. I'm going to have to do more research. So, and that's when I went back. So this was, 2008, I was in the US for my undergrads. So, and I went back after I finished my degree and, decided to finish researching and writing the novel. But of course, that took much longer than expected. So I think over the course of, I would say, 7 years when I was back in Nepal before I came back again for my MFA, the amount of time I spent in the village itself was like very minimal, about, let's say, 2.5 months. It was not a whole lot. But the one time that I was there for 2 whole months. And what happened there is that in the beginning, when I would be there, I'd be very nervous because because they didn't know me, I didn't know them very well. Even though it's like, even though they're like my relatives, it's just, but because, the urban-rural divide is really deep, like deep enough that it was very hard to like bridge that gap in the beginning. So I would just be just quiet, be on the fly on the wall and just observe them. And I think that worked because that's what you do first. You just observe, you don't really participate in anything. And all I did was take notes. And they allowed me. By they, I mean, it was my aunt that I lived with. By then, she was the only one who was in the village. Everybody else had migrated to Kathmandu. So I would just sit there, take notes, and then, like you said, I would just take notes and drink what they eat. Of course, even though I knew kind of a little bit of what they ate, of course, but how they prepare things, and what they wear. Even though I knew everything, not every sorry, even though I knew a little bit about what they would, wear, what they wear every day. It's those little things, or how they cut grass, how they milk buffaloes. These things were which you thought you knew, like you have to relearn everything. Yeah, but then after, so in the beginning, it was just quiet observation. But later on, I think once they became, they as in the people in the village became more comfortable with me, and I became more comfortable with them. I think then I started to be a part of their stories as well. And, then we started interacting more, and then, I became part of the stories. They became a part of my story. So, and I think things started to evolve organically. Then I'll just hold more conversations with people. They would talk to me more, and that's how I started to get to know them better. And later on, I think what also helped with the research, indirectly, was working as a journalist, as a reporter for Kathmandu Post, because I think that really helps me be able to interview people, just any kind of people, like, and then B, I think. Because, in Nepal, like, even if you're in Kathmandu, you collide with people from the village all the time. It might not be people from your own village, but people from villages around, Kathmandu or the rest of Nepal. So that kind of information, I just kept absorbing it while working as a journalist for the Post. And I think that all, of course, at the time, I didn't realize that was research as well. But afterwards, after I seriously sat down to write, when I came back to do my MFA, that's when I realized, all of that was research. Like, everything just it just all came together. And of course, funnily enough, when I actually started to do serious writing, I was back in the US. So I was very far away from Nepal. And I was worried, what's going to do to this research? Will I, will I be able to picture this village as well as I would like to, but it helped that I was far away, because now I could have this distance and actually write about Nepal without worrying that I'm missing something. Like, I need to go do this, I need to go do that. Because it's very hard, because you become part of the larger story that's taking place in Nepal. You just feel I need to probably report on this instead of sitting here writing about this little village. But now you have no choice. And then I think the more you write, the more real it becomes. And if I had any questions about any of the things that I needed to actually do research on, I would then call my mom or talk to my uncles who grew up there, or other people who I think might have information on it, or use my uncles and to find more information for me. So I think that they ended up becoming my research assistants later on, unpaid ones, of course. But I think they really helped later on, because because I guess my background lies in journalism. I had to be okay, is this correct? What's the color of this flower? Let's say a vegetable, this vegetable, when it flowers, what color is this going to be? So I was like, Mom, what color would the flower be? So she helped a lot. My relatives helped a lot later on, and a lot of friends helped too. Yeah. So that was a long answer to your question.
I can totally relate to, that search for detail where you want to write everything, because that's something that also happens to me. I also do research. And when I go to places, you want to write everything. You want to write about the leaves, the people, the food, the sound. And it's so hard because you can't write everything. How did you kind of juggle with that? What parts to write, what parts to leave? And was it overwhelming at times?
It was very overwhelming. And I think, but I guess that's why you have first drafts and second drafts, because,
True.
And I think the first draft really, I realized, and it came after years of practice, I realized that to get rid of all the things that are competing to be, told, I just write longhand now. The first drafts are longhand. You just sit there and just write because there is no then there is no desire to like, oh, let me just start here and delete and then call delete and keep playing with the beginning a lot because that's what I did for a really long time. I was just stuck in the beginning because I never bothered to figure out what really happens, in the whole novel. So now I think what I do now is like all these things that I want to like say or like write about, you just let it all out on the page. I think the benefit with that is that you think it's there, like you don't have to remember those things. You're like, oh, it's in a notebook now, I can always go back and take a look at them later. And the other thing is that you also realize that you just also realize things are very messy and it's okay. Like let all the mess be on the paper, and then when I go back to the computer I can clean it up. So I think that's become my process now. It's like if there are too many things that want to spill out onto the page, I just let them. Okay, let me just like literally use the paper and pen and just let it all spill out, and then it quiets the brain, and then you go back and clean it up, or you see if there's anything worth there, and if it's not, it's there.
Yeah.
But and I think with the first novel, actually with this novel, I did, after I would write something down on a piece of paper, I would go back and transcribe that into the computer. Not every word, but almost all of the handwritten drafts are saved in my computer. Because that, of course, it's easier to like search for those scenes of what I've written before on computer than on the notebook, because then after a while you're like, you forgot where exactly it was,
True.
and you get lost. But it is definitely very overwhelming, and I feel like unfortunately we just have to go through it, and only then we'll realize how to deal with it, or learn how to deal with it.
That's such a great tip, that writing longhand means you just have to write everything. There's no delete, which is such a great thing sometimes, because then, like you were saying, you're just stuck with like perfecting a few parts, and then you just don't know. You don't like go through it and know where it's heading. I think I'm going to use that. And if my handwriting is horrible, my handwriting is horrible. I don't think there are times when I can't recognize it myself, but maybe that's also an encouragement for me to get back to writing on page, just to see where it goes and not be obsessed with that delete or backspace button that we have. You were also mentioning that you started the novel in 2008, and it's been so long since then. How did you keep the story or the dream of writing this story alive? It's very easy for a lot of people to get lost in life, and art takes time. Obviously, it's not something that happens overnight. It takes a long time. It takes as long as it needs, but it also requires the push that I'm going to do this. How did that work out for you?
It's not that I didn't get lost, of course. I would say the 7 years between 7 years in Nepal, after I finished my undergrads and before I came back from MFA, I think those were the years I was lost. Of course, also those also happened to be years of research. Now I know, but back then it just felt like I was just drifting. But then, going back to your question, I think the dream to be a writer was always there. I would say started probably in my 6th grade. Probably, I'm not completely sure, because that's when I started reading novels in English. So I would say that's where it began, and so I always had. I wouldn't say knew that I would be a writer, but I knew I wanted to write. I knew, but I always assumed it was going to be more of an evening, like a moonlighting job, like not like a serious career. So I never thought that. So, but I think it was at Stanford where I did my undergrad. That's where I think after taking classes from creative writers, that's when I realized, if I am to be a good writer, I have to take it seriously. I can't be like, let me be a psychiatrist in my day job, because that's what I wanted to become. So and then write in the evening, because the creative writers, the instructors, they were very clear on it. They were like, you have to give it your all. Like you can't just be like, oh, let me just use it as a hobby, or let me just keep it as a hobby. They were like, you have to be serious about it. And I think that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to figure this out. And I think because I decided to be a writer, I guess I had to write. I had to, and the novel, it began as part of a grant. So my junior year at Stanford, I had heard that you could apply for a grant, for summer grant, and work on a novel. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. And I was, by then, I think for 2 summers I had worked at a on campus, and I just didn't want to keep doing that. I just like, let me just let me write. It sounded like an amazing opportunity. So that's how it began. So that summer in 2008 was when I drafted the novel. Of course, and as I told earlier, I realized there was a lot of work to be done. It wasn't that easy. So it's one thing to be a writer, the other to really sit down and write. If you want to want to be a writer, the other thing to really, sit down and really do it. And I think, and then I came back to Nepal, but then of course, you can't just go and write. You have to make a living as well, So that part, so all those things, and I very much got lost. I drifted because I couldn't figure out how I could do both, like make a living and write, or just or I wasn't. I'm not sure I wasn't disciplined enough, or I just couldn't figure out how to write every day. It just wasn't there. But having said that, though, the urge to write never went away. I think to some degree, my jobs, 2 jobs that I had, like one as an assistant editor at Himachal Asian and later as a reporter at the Kathmandu Post, I think because they're both very closely related to writing, I think they kind of took care of that urge for a while, because even though I was writing in my novel, working on my novel, I was working in something else. I was writing something else. Or if not writing, then I was editing somebody else's pieces. So I think that urge, it was kind of, they were taking care of that. But every now and then I'll just be like, nope, I have to write my own stuff. Like I have to finish this novel. That's where I came back for, I have to finish it. So that never went away. That feeling that I have to finish this novel never went away. Because I was like, I have begun it. And I came back to do research and finish it. I have to do it. And I think that's what happened. But having said that, though, if I hadn't gotten into an MFA, would I have finished it? Like, I have no idea. Probably would, but it probably wouldn't be this draft. Or I have no idea. I mean, those are also, of course, now we're going into ifs. But yeah, I think and I might have like you said, like how a lot of writers let go. I might have just let go too. Because I did not necessarily try, but for a while, I was like, maybe I should become a lawyer. So I had actually applied to a law school in Nepal. Like by applied, I mean like you just go pay your fees and get enrolled. And I did that too, but I didn't really finish it, of course. I just went there and I was like, no, it's not me. It's like, I'm not a lawyer. And I even also thought of like applying to civil service jobs, Lok Seva Ayog. I even like filled out the forms and was ready to take exams. But then I was like, no. I mean, of course, it's a long story as to what really happened, but I ended up not doing that either. So I was lost. Like I was, because I wasn't really writing, because I wasn't really working on my novel every day like I should have, I was trying to be these other things, and that happens. And I'm currently reading this book, Still Writing by Dani Shapiro. And there's this one thing that she keeps mentioning, where like 2 kinds of writer's block. And A is like, you just stare out the window while you're writing because you can't, that's a normal writer's block. And that she says is temporary. When there's another one where you just let go of writing and become somebody else. And that's a permanent writer's block. And I think that could have very easily happened to me, and I think and it's only normal that it happens to a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, indeed, it's difficult, and I think a lot of artists, writers, getting lost is a course of life for them. I'm glad you made it through and the book is out. It's here. I have my copy right here. I think it's a good time to request you to read something from it.
Okay. All right. I'll read the prologue. Prologue. Kanchhi was 16 when she disappeared. 16. The age apsaras are when gods send them to lure sannyasis out of their deep meditative state. Sannyasis who are supposed to be old and wise and beyond the pettiness of love, lust, and seduction. A knock on the window, a romp in the hay, a dance in the miller fields. A sannyasi. A future, a Nepali teacher once read on our fingers. That or a king, he had said. Both were extremes. One gives of everything that is power and pleasure, the other holds them in abundance. Both of whom Kanchhi had weighed the possibilities of becoming. Neither she wanted to become, especially not a sannyasi. A sannyasi was forced out of tragedies. Tragedies that Maiju, her mother, had hoped an old rusty razor blade would forestall. A chipped and blunt, handleless barber's blade that once belonged to Kanchi's grandfather. Maiju had left it out all night outside Kanchi's room, out by the pillar supporting the porch roof. Its job was to stand guard and ward off evil. When Kanchi left, she had taken it with her, along with a clear instruction from Maiju to leave it in the bag until she reached Pokhara. It didn't work. Kanchi disappeared. That was the year 1995, month in November, a Monday. 2 days after incessant rainfall wreaked havoc across Nepal, killing more than 60 people. In Torihola too, a tiny hamlet in the district of Parbat, it caused the side of a slope and a wall of an abandoned house to cave in. Fields were waterlogged, meadow plants flattened, and trees uprooted. Maiju's front yard was littered with broken branches and tiny puddles where swarms of earthworms floated dead. Otherwise, it was a beautiful moonlit morning. A little past 3, no fog. Just crisp and dark, vast mountains with their own noises. The moon, waning and gibbous, hung low on the horizon. Both Maiju and Kanchi could see its light, a dim white floating in the space between the yard and the porch roof. Kanchi from her room, Maiju from inside the kitchen, where a fire burned on the floor in front and within a small brass lamp on a shelf behind her. Some of the firewood was still damp from the rainfall. The logs hissed and dripped water as Maiju pushed them into the fire. In Kanchi's room, Kanchi sat at the edge of her bed, ready and packed for the journey. In front of her, a lamp fashioned out of an ink bottle burned on the windowsill. The bed was already made. The sheet was straightened, the quilt was folded lengthwise, and the 2 pillows, one without a cover, both dark and dirty, were on top of the quilt like stones in a shrine. When Maiju walked in with 5 pieces of millet bread wrapped in a rag and a glass of tea, Kanchi was wrapping herself in a grey woolen chadar. Here, Maiju gave her the bread. Kanchi lifted the flap of an orange cloth bag sitting next to her and tried to cram it in. Gently, Maiju said. Did you pack some tangerines too? No. Why not? I told you to pack some. There's no space left. Kanchi showed her the orange bag. It bulged with her clothes. Another bag, a checkered plastic one on the floor, was full of her textbooks. That's not an excuse, Maiju said. You have to take something for your aunt. You have to always take something whenever you go see someone. Understand? Finish drinking the tea and get some from the attic. Maiju placed the tea on the windowsill and headed towards the door. Where are you going? Kanchi asked. To the latrine, Maiju said. Kanchi got up and followed her outside. You don't have to go now, Maiju said. Drink your tea first. No, I'll get it done. How many should I bring down? 15, 20. 15, 20? That's too many. Just do as I say, Maiju said, and began to cross the yard. The latrine was 2 terrace fields below, on her right. Maiju walked Kanchi all the way down to the Setihola River, past a small bazaar on its bank called Bugger, and up to a point where Monsoon Creek, now flowing because of the recent rainfall, met the river. It took them 40 minutes, slightly longer than usual, because it was still dark and the path was still muddy and slippery in places. Kanchhi showed the way with a flashlight. Maiju followed behind, carrying the checkered bag on her back with a tumbline. Both relied on walking sticks. Both remained quiet. The mountains were still sleeping, except for the crickets and cicadas, the brooks and the creeks, and the occasional whimpers and barks of dogs far away. Sometimes when they passed by houses, they could hear people sleeping, snoring, coughing, or just breathing. A few times they heard them clearing their throats. Both Maiju and Kanchhi whispered when needed. Like when a section of a path was particularly slippery, or when they had to fill up a canteen, or when a door of a police station creaked and Maiju had to shush for Kanchhi to stop. Only after they crossed the bazaar and reached an isolated riverbed of the Monsoon Creek did they let their guard down. Listen, Kanchhi, Maiju said, resting on a boulder. Don't buy street food or water, understand? Eat the bread and the tangerines instead. Don't talk to any strangers. Don't dawdle. Call your aunt as soon as you reach Pokhara. Ask her to come pick you up. If she does not, use the directions to her place. Remind her you're Carl's daughter. Once you reach her house, call the bazaar here and leave a message. If the line is broken, write a letter. Send 2 copies in case one gets lost. Just say you're well, and I'll understand. Now don't be a nuisance to your aunt. Help her with the household chores and the kids. Tolerate her for a few months. No matter what she says, don't raise your voice at her. Don't do what you did here. Come back for the SLC exams. When are they again? In 2 months. Good. Once you're done with the exams, you can go back again. This time for jobs. No matter how hard life gets, don't come back until the exams. Understand? Are you scared? No. No need to. Just keep to yourself and throw the blade away after you get to our house. Maiju reached inside a fold in her pattuka and took out a note. 1,000 rupees. Where did you get it? Kanchhi asked. Doesn't matter. Don't lose it. Why would I? Kanchhi took a pouch out of her cholo pocket and tucked the note in. What time is it? Maiju asked. Kanchhi flipped her wrist to look at her watch. A second-hand HMT watch given to her as a gift. A little past 4, she said. Barihari by noon, Pokhara by 3, Maiju calculated. Leave a message by 5, she said. Someone will get it. Okay, Kanchhi said, and adjusted the tongue line around the checkered bag. Don't you need this? I can use my shawl. No, take it. Bring it back with you, Maiju said. Kanchhi lifted the checkered bag on her back. Maiju threw the other one on top. Don't forget the stick, she said. Kanchhi yawned. Don't fall asleep on the way either, Maiju said. You've got to look after the bags. All right. I'm leaving now. Don't let anyone use my room. Who'll want to use it? I don't know. Kanchhi turned around and began walking up the riverbed. In the distance, the path turned left and disappeared up the mountain. Walk carefully, Maiju raised her voice a little. Okay, Kanchhi said, and plodded on. Soon, she raised the bend and turned around. The flashlight was the giveaway. It was directed at Maiju and glowed like the tail of a glowworm. Then it was gone. That was the last Maiju saw of Kanchhi.
Thank you so much for reading it. It had been a while that I read the prologue, and now that I read the whole book, everything connects. I was just having some flashbacks. Mm-hmm. How did the prologue emerge? Was it like this when it started, or did it emerge somewhere in? This is what usually happens. It emerges somewhere in between. How did that work for you?
Yeah, it emerged much later. So in the beginning, when I had started the novel, in 2008 and up until much later, the novel actually started with the news that the mother character gets from someone in the village, and the news is that her daughter is coming home. Kanchhi is coming home. So that's how it began for a really long time, and that's where I tried to figure that out. But once I started working in Kanchi's character, that it became clear that that's not that shouldn't be the beginning, and that's not the beginning. So yeah, it happened only after, I would say, in probably 2019 or early 2020s. Oh, wow. So it was much later that I realized, because I think it was definitely after I started working in Kanchi. because I worked on Maiju, the mother character at first, because I felt like I had to know the mother first. And that took a really long time to really understand the mother. It was only after I thought I had, her story down, and then I moved on to Kanchhi, that I think the story became very clear to me. And I think it just happened, oh, this is where I should begin, Yeah.
Yeah, it's like in the first line itself, we know that Kanchhi has disappeared, which is not a spoiler, but I was curious, why did you keep like the disappearing part right at the start in the first line itself?
I think even before like the prologue came to me, like in the way it is here right now, the fact that she disappeared was like never like something that I was planning and hiding, like even when the news came, right? For instance, that beginning I was talking about, even when the news came to the mother that her daughter was returning home, you just knew, you as the reader knew, oh, she's gone. Like she's not in the village, So even when I was struggling with that abandoned beginning, I was, even within the first few paragraphs or by the end of that chapter, I was going to make it very clear that Kanchhi had disappeared. Like, it had been 10 years that she'd been gone. She'd like had sent no messages, like, So it was never like going to be a surprise reveal that she disappeared. It was always going to be like something that the readers would know right away that she's done. I guess the problem is now, not problem. I guess the mystery would be, how did she disappear? Or what happened to her, Of course, that too actually happened much later, because for a while I was trying to figure out what exactly happened to her. I was like, okay, did she come back? Okay, the news has come that she's coming back, but has she? But is she really coming back? Did this person really see Kanchhi, or did he see somebody else? So I think I was really wrestling with that for a really long time, and it was only after after I started working in Kanchhi, and then I realized what exactly happens to her. Then the prologue emerged, and then the fact that the story would now be about what exactly happened to her, that happened.
So you knew some of the plot points, like she would disappear, and then like you were searching, why was she disappearing, or what will happen to her afterwards. So that was also a search for you as the writer of the novel itself.
It was like I said, like the plot came first. The plot that the mother would wait for her daughter to come home.
Yeah.
That was just like set in stone, like back in 2008. And problem for me now was working backwards and figuring out, okay, so what happened? Why is the mother waiting for her daughter? Where is the daughter? What happened to her? Is she coming back? Like, did she really disappear? Yeah, all those things. Yeah. So I had to work backwards.
Yeah. Indeed. I'm also curious about the name of the mother. It's Maiju. And Maiju also means mother's brother's wife. So is it a wordplay, or what is it?
Yeah, I think unlike Kanchhi, I did not know what to call her mother for a really long time. So in the beginning, I used to call her mother Budi, which means old mother. And that was, but I never quite liked the term, because I don't call anyone Budia, although, I've heard other people call like their grandmothers Budia. I never called, anyone Budia. So it never felt right. And I did wonder if I should call, the mother character like Ama, right? And just like Kanchhi called her. But for me, Ama doesn't mean mother. Like, I call my grandmother Ama, because my mother calls her, mother, of course, Ama. We all ended up calling her Ama as well. So for me, Ama means grandmother, and mom means mom, like mother. But then I couldn't say mom, because mom felt very urban and very, very American. So I can use mom. So, but I couldn't, and mother, I never thought of even saying mother, because mother always felt very formal, very clinical to me. So I was like, no, mother. It never felt right. So I really struggled. And for a while, I was like, maybe I should have some nicknames for her, that I could use. But I was like, but I never call any woman by their nicknames, like any of my, it was just very, so I struggled a lot. And then finally, I think I stumbled in Maiju, which is very weird, like how I hadn't thought of it for a long time, because this is my mom's village, right? So most of the women I see, or most of the women I met there while in the village are all my aunts, like Maijus, because they're all, like you said, my mom's brother's wives. And even though they're not like brother, like sibling, they are like cousins. So all of these like there's cousin brothers and their wives. They're all Maijus to me. So like, and then I think finally I was like, because also I had stayed with at my Maiju's place there, my aunt's place there, and I was like, let me just call her Maiju and see, because like I said, like these were Maijus that I know, So once I called her Maiju, things just opened up for me. I could just like clearly see the mother character, and I think it really liberated me. Like it just felt right, and I think it also gave me the confidence that I needed to write about this woman, because all these women that I knew in this village, were my Maijus. So, and I think it stuck, and I didn't. I was like, yeah, I'm going to keep it, and I kept it that way. It just felt right.
Oh, interesting. There are a lot of songs in the book. Like there are song lyrics of other songs, and there are also like songs or like poems that Kanchhi writes herself. How did that come to be, and how was your process of writing those? Like if you had to create a new song or a new poem for that character?
I think it's so interesting that people have remarked on it, because I just didn't think too much of it. Of course, when I was drafting, it just felt very organic. Like this character would like be into songs or write poetry. I guess I guess I didn't think not necessarily too much about it, that it would be like not normal for her to do that, or even not normal for me as a writer to do it. But I think that's probably because like songs and lyrics are part of our lives in Nepal. And even in rural villages, and probably especially in rural villages, I think, where even if you don't have TV, normally you don't have TV, and if you don't have access to radio either, you still sing. A lot of women who, when they go to cut grass, they just sing, they just hum. So I think writing down songs was like never like, oh, should I have songs in? Or like I never wrestled with that question, or should I have songs or not? So because I just found such a part of the life there, that I just included them in. I guess the question was now, of course, like what songs to include and whether they should make sense. And of course, I couldn't just because I thought of a song doesn't mean I should just dump it in. It has to make sense, because ultimately when the reader reads it, what they read, what they see are words, and the words have to help the story move forward. So yeah, and there were a lot of songs that, not a lot, like a few songs that I had to take them out because I couldn't get copyright permission on time. So I ended up just only using just the title, I guess. If those are like real songs, like copyrighted songs, then I've only used the title and only described them, but haven't really used the lyrics verbatim. The others, if you see them, they are I just made them up, or the character made them up, and I wrote them down. But yeah, I think for me it was just such a part of living in, not just in Kathmandu, but in a village in Nepal, that didn't think too much of that.
It just came naturally. Kanchhi has a songbook that she reads, and that kind of reminded me of the songbooks that we used to get here before, of course, the internet came in and you could just Google lyrics. You had to see through the songbooks, and I think that was, like you said, such a part of our lives. And yeah, that made me nostalgic about all the songbooks that used to be there in the past.
Yeah, and not just that. I think, like you said before, we had internet. You just, wouldn't. There was no way of accessing those lyrics. So if you heard something on radio, you just like transcribe it yourself because you're like, I don't remember the lyrics, So and then so writing down the lyrics and having them on a piece of paper was really just part of growing up.
Yeah, like it's so difficult to imagine doing that now. You just Google it. Oh, and the lyrics is because like you just mentioned writing down the lyrics. I know a lot of people like my aunts and other people in the family who I found some of their books that like notebooks where they would like copy lyrics, and now when I think about it, it's so it's unimaginable. I'm not sure if the kids who are growing up in this generation know that used to be a thing that we used to do in the past. It feels very distant now. Yeah. I did receive another query from our listeners. It's like related to publishing, so I think we can move there and talk a bit about how is the publishing process like, and how does, if somebody wants to be published, how does that writer go around? This was a question that was asked by Miller Shreshta and also June at June's_constellations. So yeah, how did it go for you and for Kanchhi?
So, so the publishing process, I would say, it was both very long, also very straightforward. I think I'm probably going to repeat what every writer has told. It's like if you've just begun writing, don't worry about publishing yet, just finish the draft first. Because no publisher, no literary agent will take you on or even look at your work until you're done. So you have to finish the manuscript first, and then it's not just the first draft or second draft; it's the final draft. Like you have to have a draft that you're very happy with or satisfied with, and now need somebody else to take a look at it and say, okay, I can help you make it better. Not necessarily like go back and revise the whole thing, but I can take a look at it and see if it's worth publishing or not. So up until you have that draft, you shouldn't worry about it. Having said that, though, I think, of course, it's good to know the process. So this is something I guess I knew probably because I went to, a college here in the U.S. That kind of knew that once you have a draft, then you look for a literary agent. Big publishers, big publishing houses won't really read your manuscript. Like they don't, unless you have a literary agent. Like they just not going to get the unsolicited submissions. So here, I think you just go ahead and find a literary agent. Of course, like you can submit to small independent publishing houses by yourself without a literary agent. But if you want to be published by a big publishing house, or if you don't want to deal with the marketing or publicity aspect of it yourself, then you go with the big publishing houses. You try, and of course, not that easy. So, but first, the middle step is you find a literary agent, which is a kind of like a given thing here in the U.S. In Nepal, of course, it's not like. I don't think I've come across any literary agents in Nepal. And I think even in India, it's only begun with in the last decade or so. And that was fortunate for me because, my literary agent is based in India, Kanishka Gupta. So once you have that draft ready, then you create a list of agents that you want to approach, Of course, that's also not a lot of work, but that's also work. Like you have to do a little bit of homework on who might be the best fit. You don't always know, but of course you do. You go look at their website, their page, you read up on them. And also you like what you also do is like if you have a favorite books and you think that your work is similar to theirs. See if they would figure out who their agent is, and they usually list their agent in the acknowledgement section, of the book. So you figure out who the agent is, and then you look them up and see, see if they might be willing to take you on. So basically, you're just spamming these literary agents like inbox, spamming in the sense that they do have like on their website they say, oh yeah, I'm looking for new submissions, send them to me. So you just and it usually takes 6 to 8 weeks for them to get back.
Okay.
If they don't get back, it's rejection. You know, if some of them will get back to you just by saying, you know, a very basic form rejection, saying, sorry, you know, the right fit, bye bye, you know. But some of them will read and will either give you feedback as in like, you know, it's really good, but I don't see how I can sell it, you know. So a pass, or some, and then but then you're only looking for that one person who's willing to take you on. So yeah, I have heard like some writers send like 100 of these queries, you know.
Oh wow.
And yeah, but then yeah, it's like you don't know. You're just hoping one of them loves your work, you know. And
Indeed.
it is. So yeah, so that's how you begin. And then once you have a literary agent, the literary agent will then go ahead and handle everything publishing related for you. They will find the publisher for you in the sense that they will send your manuscripts out to the editors that they think might like your work, you know, because they know the publishing world much better than you do, you as the writer. And then once an editor at a publishing house likes the work, they will go ahead and look at the contract for you. Like, you know, the two will work and draw up the contract, and then you will just end up signing it. And, you know, so yeah, all those things. And then once the publisher is ready to start the editorial process, then that's where the editorial process begins. And then the book comes out within a year, I would say. But it does depend on how much work still needs to be done and how much time, and, you know, where and what kind of publishing schedule they have. So I think what I've been told is that it takes usually, like, after you find an agent, it usually takes up to like 2 years for the book to come out. Because, you know, yeah. Yeah, so, and I think in my case too, I think finding the agent took a while. Or let me not say finding the agent took a while, but signing the contract with the agent took a while. So that probably took a year, maybe a year and a half. And after that, finding the publisher it went much faster than expected. And then, yeah, the book came out in 2024. Yeah.
It takes time, doesn't it? It's not. I was reading this book titled Yellow Face last year, and that's something that the writer talks about, that book publishing is a very slow process, and we as readers, or you know, who are outside that world, we can't see how slow things are moving, because you just see the book that's published and you're like, oh yeah, you know, people get published, but you don't really know what's happening at the back, which is what you've described. You know, it takes a lot of time. Also, this was a query that also came in. It was Julie would asked, and does it cost any money, like from the side of the writer, to get these things done, or
no, and it shouldn't. So if anybody's telling you, pay me something and I'll publish you, it's a scam. Or, you know, just run away from that person. Not just the publisher. If a literary agent is like, hey, I'm going to be a literary agent, pay me something. No. Just run away from that person too, because nobody charges you. A literary agent takes a cut from, you know, from your contract. I'm sorry, not from your contract, from your commission. So they know, I'm sorry, I actually forgot what the exact word is. So, okay, let me rephrase that. So a literary agent basically takes a cut after they sell a book to a publisher. So because they make money off of that, they should not be charging you upfront. And if anybody does it, and nobody charges. And some people do, like I've heard that some people would be like, you know, hey, I'll charge you this much. And don't fall for that. That's just a money making scheme for them. Or some people will be like, hey, I'll charge this much and I'll edit it for you. You know, because it needs editing, I'll edit it for you, or give you some editorial feedback in return for some money. And then, you know, don't fall for that either, because once you have an agent, they usually will give you editorial feedback, and it's free. Yeah,
indeed, yeah. Those are things that you know, we wouldn't know. So thank you for sharing. One last question, and then we'll move to the rapid fire. This was also a question that was asked by our listener, who is also a writer himself, who was also on this podcast. So this is a question from Rishi Amatya. He's the author of Radha, and he has asked you about your writing habits.
Okay, maybe this is one of the things where I have to be like, hey, do as I say and not do as I do. Kind of thing. But okay, so the writing habit, I try to write a few hours every day, which is like I aim for 2 hours a day because it's very hard to find more than that right now because I have a full-time job and I have a little daughter. So yeah, but that's every day, like Monday to Friday. On Saturdays and Sundays, I try to write at least 4 hours a day. But that doesn't always happen. So I think definitely it's a struggle. Some days you just like, no matter how early you wake up or how late you stay to write, your brain just like shuts down. It just won't work. But I think the point is to show up, to create some kind of discipline. Like, and sometimes it like you overwhelm yourself. I think, oh my God, I have to be here for 2 hours. Like, and I have like, struggled with this thing for so long that I don't want to go back into it,
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to, then I think I realized that you have to trick yourself. You have to be like, oh, you don't have to write. You don't have to sit for the whole 2 hours. Just let's just write for 10 minutes. Or you trick yourself into saying, oh, let's just write a sentence. It doesn't have to be paid. It doesn't have to be like any set number of words. Let's just write a sentence. And I think that's how you trick. Because once you write a sentence, you just keep going. Yeah. So that, but to create that writing habit, this kind of writing habit, of course, not like I said, I would like to do it every day, but it doesn't always happen every day. But I do write at least 4 times a week. And for that, but to come to that, it took a really long time. Yeah, it was just, and I think at the end of the day, you just have to find a way to do that. Otherwise, so during the drafting the first novel towards the end of it, I realized that if I like went away like for a day or two, it would take me forever to get back into the novel. Like I had forgotten where and I would know what scene I'm working, but I'd forgotten what state I was in. And it takes forever to get back into it. And now because I know that, like, oh my God, it's gonna take forever. Like I don't want to lose that momentum. And because of that, I like, okay, better show up, better go, better. Even if just to take a look at where I was, I'd just be like, okay. I was like, what? I don't have to write. Let me just read. Let me just read what I wrote. So just make it. I think the best thing to do is make it as easy as possible for you, the writer, to like sit and write. Like, if you start thinking too much, then you just can't do it. So you have to you really have to trick yourself, But after a while, you realize that if you stay away, it just takes very hard to get back in, and I don't want to go through that again, because I like it. I was talking about it. Those 7 years in Nepal, in between my undergrad and grad years, were just like absolutely, I was just lost. And I think I don't want to be that way again. I want to feel that way again, where I'm just like drifting and have no idea what I'm doing with my writing life. And I think because I don't want to feel that way anymore, I make myself sit down. Like, I've seen the dark side of not writing, so I don't want to go there again.
What do you write about? I mean, when you're working on Kanchhi, it was probably the book. Like, of course, a novel takes so much time and energy and effort. But now that it's done, does it feel like, I need to find something else to write? Or maybe you use prompts, or, how do you... I think the most difficult part is to start, like you'd said. Something that I experience is the first 15 minutes are like the worst. I'm like, oh, but then after that, it gets easier. And then once you reach, it's not always a flow state, but it's like you feel better about like being there and writing.
I mean, right now I've already begun the second novel.
Oh, wow.
And it actually began when I realized I was done with the first one. So in like 2021, I would say like late 2021, when I, was happy with the draft I had. Like I thought it was the final draft that I could show it to a few agents. And, you sent you email those agents and you wait to hear back from them. Like I said, it takes like anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks or even longer. So when you're waiting to hear back from them, that's when I began the second draft. And I did wonder for a while, like what I'm going to write about. But I think like as you know you're reaching an end, you just know. I think after a really long time just writing, you just know, oh, now I'm coming to an end. I can feel it. And then your brain, I think, is always thinking about, okay, what's the second book going to be about? What am I going to write about next? And I think it just came to me very naturally what the second book was going to be about. It's going to be about Kathmandu now. I want to write about Kathmandu now. So, yeah, I've already begun the second. That's where I started drafting, actually, when I was waiting for the agents to read and get back to me. And even as I waited for it to be published, for those 21 to 24, we're 25 now. So, I've just been drafting the second novel. Of course, it's not always been every day, unfortunately, because, I was pregnant for a while and then, gave birth and all that. So that took some time out of it. But yeah, it's the novel now. I just get up, read the novel. The very first draft, I just long handwriting, wrote everything by hand. So that because now I know that, hey, I better know what happens, even if it's just an outline. I have to know, otherwise I'll just be stuck in the beginning forever, and I don't want to take a decade again. But you never know how long it might take. But I don't want to take a decade or more to finish the second book.
Wow,
but that's the plan anyway.
Great. Sounds like a great plan. Writing 2 hours a day. Okay, I'm making mental note about trying. Yeah, that was so wonderful to hear about, your process and your habits, and it's very inspiring and motivating. Let us now move to the rapid fire. Are you ready?
Yes.
Your favorite place to write?
My office. Not really favorite, but that's where I have to sit down and write. That's where everything is, the tea, the computer, the books. So yeah.
Do you have a favorite day or time to write?
Even though it's very hard, it's the mornings. I'm not an early riser, but if I get my writing done first thing in the day, I am such a happy person for the rest of the day. Like, nothing bothers me. Like, I have so much energy. It's just like I'm just a happy woman if I reach them. Otherwise, I think I have to constantly be like, oh, I have to write later and then I thought, oh, will I have time? Or will I be able to write anything? Or am I going to be too tired? And if I'm too tired, I'll be pretty guilty of not writing. So it's like I just end up in this negative spiral of emotions. So first thing in the morning.
Right.
Yeah.
True. That was also something that just reminded me that Smriti Ravindra also said the same thing. She was like, yeah, write and then do 20 other things that you need to do, or else it'll be stuck at the back of your head. And I agree. I tend to do 20 other things before writing. So
sometimes you have to do that too.
Yeah, but I definitely need to get back to that habit. Do you snack while writing? If yes, what is your favorite writing snack?
No, I drink tea. I just drink black tea. It's pure black tea, no sugar, no milk. That's my snack, I guess. Yeah. For a while I used to drink coffee. Now I can't take coffee anymore. But it's just black tea, and it doesn't have to be what brand. Just black tea.
Just black tea.
Yeah.
Is it flavored?
No, it's just black. I think the only flavored ones, like the all grey, has a little bit of perfume, like a scent in it. But not necessarily. No, it has to be caffeinated in the morning, but afternoon I take decaf. So yeah, it just has to be caffeinated in the morning.
Okay, tea, yeah, but yeah, we can consider that a snack. Obviously, I know a lot of people who love to drink tea, so it's definitely a thing. You had mentioned that you began reading novels when you were around grade 6.
Yeah, 6th grade.
6th grade. So, do you remember any favorite childhood novels that you can recall?
Childhood favorite. It's probably Shreshta, but I didn't read that when I was in 6th grade. I read that when I was, I would say, in high school, 10th or 11th grade, and I didn't actually read that. I heard it over the radio. I think his name is Achyut Gautam. No, I forgot his last name. But Achyut, I think he has this show where he just reads novels, like Nepali novels. And somehow I ended up on that channel. I listened to FM radio stations, and then I was like, "Oh, what is this?" I was immediately sucked in by the novel, and then after that, I went ahead and got the book and read it. So and I've read it multiple times over the years. So yeah.
That was before audiobooks. You were listening an audiobook live.
Yeah, no, he's good. Yeah.
I'm assuming that was live, right? So yeah, live reading, live audiobook, basically. 3 books to read to complement reading Kanchhi.
Oh wow. Well, that's a tough one. So to complement reading Kanchhi.
It can be anything though, yeah.
I mean, there's so many books I read while reading Kanchhi. So one of the books that I reread then was Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried. It's nothing to do with mother-daughter relationship, like nothing to do with Nepal at all. But it's actually to do with Vietnam, And I think I read it because I remember really loving it. And at some point, we're really stuck. You have to pick up another book and be like, let me just enjoy doing something for a change. So that's one book. The other book, this wasn't something that I read while drafting Kanchhi, but something I read later. It's Hila Blom. I think her name is Hila Blom. It's her How to Love a Daughter. And it's actually about a mother-daughter relationship. And I was like, whoa, this is good. How come I had not heard of it? Like, how come I didn't see it before, So that one. The other, I would say, like, Nepali, because, I read a lot of Nepali novels while drafting Kanchhi. And one of them, I think, was kind of pivotal to, to my novel. Not necessarily, like, an inspiration per se, but it helps me figure out some of the plot points. It was actually Lil Bahadur Chhetri's Basai. And I think a lot of Nepal, like, I think it's a part of the curriculum in 12th grade. Yeah, but I think because I did my A levels, I didn't have to read it. So I had not read it until I picked it up in 2018, maybe, or 17 or 18. And luckily, Cornell has a really good collection of Nepali books. So I just, when I read it, and I was like, oh, this is good. And it helped me with a couple of things that I was wrestling with in the novel. So yeah, those three. How to Love a Daughter, The Things They Carried, and Lil Bahadur Chhetri's Basai.
Great. Yeah, I remember reading Basai. It's a part of the curriculum. Do you have a favorite line from like the final draft of Kanchhi that is now printed?
Favorite line?
Yeah, or it could also be a scene. I mean, like line is a bit too might be a bit too short.
Yeah. Wow, I have no idea.
That's all right.
I don't think it's like a favorite scene too. I wouldn't call it favorite, but one scene that I guess remember more than the others, probably because when I would reach that scene, I'd be like, okay, I know I'm coming towards an end. Not necessarily towards an end, but I knew things happen. Like even I could feel it by writing. So I think it was the scene, or the chapter, the scene where the third character, Chalnath, comes into the picture. I think that is the scene. Like, for me, just know like in my head, like I know things take a turn now. Yeah. So I would say that scene.
Okay. This is a long question.
Okay.
Like you were mentioning, writers, you send it out to your agents, and obviously there must be a lot of rejection, and you're just looking for the one person who can trust, who can who will reply back to you. So, to anybody who might be facing rejection as an artist or as a writer, do you have anything to tell them so that they can continue, or what made you continue after all these years and all the things that needed your attention during that time, and you came back? So what made you go on?
I mean, I would say go on, like keep at it. Like no matter how tough it is, keep at it. I think there, like you said, there's so many other things you would rather do, and there's so many rejections that you can take, but you have to keep fighting. It's like you just forget about everything else and just keep at it. Finish the draft first, finish the manuscript first, and then once you send it out, and sometimes we do send it out, prematurely, and I have done that before too. I have like reached out to publishers even before it was ready, and I heard nothing. Of course they'd be like, "What is this?" And, but the good thing is, I think I was like, the funny thing about being that naive and arrogant is that arrogance becomes a shield, so you don't really feel anything if they reject you. You're like, okay, whatever, I'll just keep writing. So it's actually later when you think when you know you're ready to share it, then you become a little nervous about how people are going to react to it. I think, and so when because after a certain number, after you spend a certain number of years on it, and after you're pretty sure it's a polished draft, and that's when you're like, okay, what happens if the agent rejects it? And it's a very nerve-wracking process. And if you get rejected, feel it, like feel the rejection. The first time I got rejected, I cried, and it's okay. Like you have to cry, like cry it out, whatever you write about the rejection in your journal, or create a poem out of it, or as some other writers do, tape it on the wall or something, or put it in a drawer, whatever works for you, just go for it. If it really bothers you, let it bother you for a while. And I think that's the thing, like after a few days, like you forget it. It just becomes like, something that happened, and you get up and send more emails again. That's what happens. But then the good thing is, the first rejection hurts. The second might hurt a little bit, but third, fourth, you just get so used to it. You're just like, whatever, like you just kind of expect it after the third, fourth. You're just like, yeah, this is like, and you just become very good at just like, okay, this doesn't matter. You just like, and after a while, it really ends up becoming about that one person you're waiting for. That when it happens, you start becoming, oh, how did that happen? Then you start actually doubting like yourself, like, oh, does this person really want to like represent me, or this book? No. So I would say, keep at it. And I think that's one of the advice that my professor would give to me too. Just keep at it, like no matter how tough no matter how tough it is, just keep at it. Don't think too much, overthink it.
Yeah, just write 200 words every day.
Or 2 hours or whatever, like, I think I tried to write, like, place a word limit. It didn't work for me. For me, it was about time. And I realized, I think that's what it is for me.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Weena, for taking this time and, out of a Saturday morning and speaking with me. It was so wonderful speaking to you and getting to know about Kanchhi, the story behind it, and your own story in that process. I'm super inspired. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to get back to my own writing habit, and I hope I do. I'm definitely going to try that longhand thing. My hands, like, I'm faster at typing now than writing, but let me just give that a try. It might work. Thank you so much. It was wonderful speaking with you.
Thank you, Alfa. Thank you for having me. I mean, it was my pleasure as well.